Welcome to the Sustainable Production Forum. Hath squile each tenoyap, toits tanakwian quinshaman, cis quian sna, an hath in squalowin, an wanoxt in squalowin titseeds. Welcome everybody. It lifts my heart to welcome you to these ancestral lands and waters of the Mkhwanazi, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish Old Olkameo. I am Squamish and Stalo, and I'm standing on these shorelines where the salt water meets the shoreline and comes back into the forest with ancient trees, ancient cedar trees, ancient fir trees, and ancient maples. Welcome, OCM.
It's our job at CBC Radio-Canada to report on what we, as Canadians, care about. Politics, culture, sports, entertainment. But there's a bigger picture, something Canadians care about even more: the environment. It's what all the rest of it hinges on. We wouldn't be here without forests, wildlife, and oceans. Stories on the environment often have the way of making us feel powerless and small. Who are we against a hurricane? Who are we against a wildfire? Who are we against a changing climate? We are more powerful than it seems. So we're not just going to report on the environment. We're going to take action and help preserve all the things we care about. We've looked at how we can do better and set some goals for 2026. And that's just the beginning. Our ultimate goal is carbon neutral. As we move towards zero, we will report on our progress. Keeping you informed is our job, after all.
Ontario's film and television industry is committed to a sustainable future. The Ontario Green Screen Initiative is a public-private partnership of industry leaders that have assembled to provide the tools, relationships, resources, and educational opportunities required to make real environmental change. Visit ontariogreenscreen.ca for more information about how you can take part.
Welcome to SPF 22. I'm Zena Harris, President of GreenSpark Group and Creative Director of the Sustainable Production Forum.
Hi, I'm Melanie Windle, Executive Producer of the Sustainable Production Forum. Thank you for being here with us. I'd like to thank Cease Weiss for that wonderful traditional welcome. I'm tuning in from the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Nakota Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3 in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta.
Today, I'm tuning in from the traditional territories of the Puyallup and Coast Salish peoples of the Puget Sound area. This virtual event is coming to you from around the globe. And if you are unsure of whose traditional land you are watching us from, you can visit native-land.ca or indigenousworld.org to learn more. Those links should be popping up in the chat shortly. Please share with us in the chat where you are tuning in from.
We are so excited to welcome you back to the 7th Annual Sustainable Production Forum. It's a delight to gather again. For the better part of 2022, Zina and I have been discussing your pain points, your successes, and figuring out how we can have an impact and move the needle in decarbonization in our sector.
We have been meeting with leaders, experts, change makers, and disruptors for the last 6 weeks, having incredible conversations, and we are excited to share them with you throughout the month of October.
If you have occasion to be in Vancouver, Toronto, or New York City, don't forget to check out our in-person events. Please introduce yourself. We love seeing the community grow.
Something special about SPF is that it is a gathering place for stakeholders across the entertainment industry, and we are very grateful for the support, collaboration, and allyship we have developed with our partners.
The SPF 22 lead partners are presenting partner, Real Green, Creative BC, Motion Picture Production Industry Association. Platinum partner, MBS Canada. Signature partners, CBC Radio-Canada and Telefilm Canada. Please visit our website or check out our sponsor page on the event platform to get to know all our partners and vendors.
A bit of housekeeping. Please take an opportunity to engage with the community board, to post or take our polls during sessions. Say hello to our partners and vendors. Please help us gather important measuring points by participating. Join the social media conversation by using the hashtag SPF22.
Hey folks, we know how important measuring data is, and in fact, it's what so many of us are really passionate about in our evolution of sustainable production. We are also really excited to welcome you to Measuring Impact, Using Data to Drive Change, presented by Gold Partner Ontario Greenscreen. The data doesn't lie. And in fact, it brings strong arguments forward and can be leveraged to communicate to crew and other stakeholders, giving us the power to shift practices and norms in the industry's quest to decarbonize. This session will be led by Chris Dunn, production consultant at Ontario Greenscreen. And we are joined by guest speakers, Rosé Canela Moss, Senior Sustainable Production Manager at ITV Studios, Cindy Mkhwanazi, Operations Manager at GreenSet, Zsófia Szemerédy, International Manager at Albert. All right, let's dive in.
Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Chris Dunn. I'm a production consultant at Ontario Creates, and I work at the Ontario Film Commission. There I lead the Ontario Greenscreen Initiative, and OGS is an advisory committee that's comprised of 27 public and private organizations who've come together with the unified goal of helping the industry reduce their waste and their carbon footprint. Measuring data is one of the most important things that we can do as an industry, and without a deeper understanding of how much carbon we're emitting and how much waste we're generating, we can't move forward with planning to reduce it. This panel is going to focus on measuring, the tools that are in place to carry out that measurement, and some of the spin-off benefits of collecting the data. I just wanted to start by saying how excited I am to be at this panel and to be here to speak with this group of esteemed experts within their field from around the world. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have each of the panelists provide a bit more context into their unique roles within the industry, and then perhaps provide some insights into their sustainability journey. So perhaps we can start with Rosé, and then Cindy, and Belinda, and then Zsófia.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. It's nice to be back at the Sustainable Production Forum this year. My name is Canela, and as Belinda mentioned, I'm the Senior Sustainable Production Manager at ITV Studios. I've been on that role just since May 2022, so just since this year. So my job is mainly to support all our global production companies on the delivery of sustainability. So we're working with them in behind the camera, so on all the operational side, but also on the content that we put in front of the camera. So our preferred tool that we're using is Albert and the certification as well. So this is what I'm engaging our production companies with. My experience with sustainability, well, I have experience on TV, mainly TV production, but my experience on sustainability with TV started at Albert actually 6 years ago. And that's where I really learned, because I was helping productions to understand and reduce their impact. That's where I really, really learned the importance of data and the importance of measurement, understanding before you take actions.
Great, thanks, Rose. Cindy?
Thank you so much for the wonderful intro, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy Mkhwanazi, and I'm a carbon analyst, training facilitator, and co-founder at GreenSet, which is a non-profit film industry sustainability organization in South Africa. And GreenSet is a branch of the SA Film Academy, which is a non-profit working in the sustainability space. And we assist productions to manage their carbon footprint, to minimize it, as well as reduce their environmental impact. But our main focus is in-service skills training, career path development, and employment creation within sustainability in film. And since 2019, with the support of the SA Film Academy, GreenSet has placed eco stewards, green PAs, and sustainability coordinators, and they've used the PGA green tools, Albert, as well as Add Green. It's my first time at the forum, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Belinda?
Hi, everybody. My name is Belinda Johnson. I head up GreenSet in Cape Town, South Africa. I've been in the industry since my early 20s, and I worked for many years in art department, which really taught me a lot about the inputs that the industry has when we create productions, how much carbon we're actually creating. And I worked for a local service company called Film Africa for 10 years, and it was during my time at Film Africa, with the assistance of the head of production, Marisa Sonneman, that we introduced a green line in the budget of all productions that were produced by Film Africa. And this really set me on a path, and I joined GreenSet full-time in 2020.
Thanks, Belinda. And last but not least, Zsófia.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me here. It's my first time as well. Well, I'm the new international manager at Albert. I've taken over from Rosé, and I recently just joined the company in September. So I've been here for about a month. My remit is international partnerships, and we cater for our global partners and our new partners, so existing partners, new partners, but I think we will talk a lot about Albert in this panel later down the line. And so my background is actually, it used to be distribution and sales. That's why I learned a lot about the importance of data, figures, box office numbers mainly. Then I went on to work in development, where I learned a lot about what we can do in sustainability at an early stage and why is that important. That kind of opened my eye. And then I met Rosé, and she talked to me about sustainability. And so I founded my own consultancy in Hungary. And we advised mainly blockbusters and high-end TV shows, and that was 2 years ago, and now I'm here at Albert.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Zsófia. So it's clear that we've got a really incredible cross-section of industry experience on this panel. So I just wanted to say that I'm really excited to learn from all of you today. I've been with Ontario Green Screen for about 2.5 years, and over those past 2.5 years, I've been working really closely with Albert in the UK, and also our national partner, Real Green, and data collection has been a big piece of that collaboration. So I'm hoping that today we can perhaps maybe take a little bit of a step back to understand the different types of methods in which we gathered the data. So for instance, things like the types of tools that are available to productions to use, how does it work, and what are some of the outcomes of those tools? And so I'm going to move to Zsófia right now, just to maybe give us a bit of a insight and some context into how the Albert tool supports productions, but not just only in the UK, but internationally, and how those producers that are using the tool on an international scale, what do they get out of it on the back end? How does it work for them? What are some of the benefits that it provides to them in terms of certification, which I know in the UK is something that's eligible, and just recognition as well. So Zsófia, can you maybe jump in on that question?
Sure. Well, that's quite a lot.
That's a lot, I know.
Please do add anything that I miss out on this. As probably many of you know, in the UK, broadcasters mandated Albert, so it meant that we're doing a lot more in the UK, but we're also amping up our output internationally, and we're focusing a lot on international now. So the new international division of Albert exists now. It's me and Liliane, the two of us together, two Hungarians. And what it means, so Albert generally, what Albert means, you have a carbon action plan that you have to fill out, and then and a footprint, and that gives you your certificate. And everyone kind of thinks of Albert as kind of this production tool, a calculator, but we're a lot more than that. And I feel so self-conscious because Rosette's sitting here and she basically created this. And now I'm just like paying back my homework to her. It's really funny in that sense. But so Albert is a lot more than just a calculator, and we really like to emphasize the hearts and mind and the education and all the other initiatives that we started as well. So there's an offsetting scheme. We recently signed with Ecology, who's our new offsetting partner, for example. Albert launched a studio standard as well, which we'd like to really amp up internationally. So if any of our international partners out there, yes, sign up your studios as well. And there are a couple of other initiatives within Albert, but we do collect a lot of data industry-wide. And why it's important? Well, why is sustainability important? Like, because it's about our lives, it's about our future. So I think data helps us measure where we can actually improve a lot of things, and that's why it's important to fill out Albert. Even if you can't get the certificate for any reason internationally, maybe it's geo-blocked, you can still do your footprint, and always do your footprint, because the more data we have, the better I don't know, results we can actually, yeah, the better conclusions we can collect from that.
Thanks to Zsófia. And I think it's also important to note with calculation tools that are available, that Albert is not the only tool that's available. There's a number of different tools internationally that are out there. There's the PGA tools that are available. So the Pear, the Peach, and the Peach Plus tools. In Europe, there's also green shooting in Germany, and the environmental calculator, EURCAD. So there's a number of different tools that are basically hoping to gather the same types of data. And I think maybe we can move to Rosé to talk perhaps maybe about her experience in regards to producers and to people that are inputting. Like, what are some of the tactics and maybe some of the best practices that individuals or organizations can use to be successful in inputting that data? And again, sorry, I have like about 4 questions in each question, so I'm trying to like condense things as much as we can. But like, when are the best times to begin this process? What types of data are being collected, and how is it being used by productions? Rosé,
No,
can you give it some?
Yes. So basically, and actually for me, because of this new role at ITV2, this is really interesting to see from just one company, like obviously before working for Albert or for any initiative that works with different companies, it completely changes. So for me, it's really interesting to learn on how to engage with your producers in your own company. So as I always said, but I said that since 6 years ago, it's really important that you engage your producers at the beginning. So the production needs to be engaged at the beginning of pre-production, even development stage, because actually on the development stage, for example, if you have to go to certain locations, that's when you're going to make those decisions, right? Or like what you're developing. where you're going and the impact that this is going to have. So really, really important that this on the pre-production stage. Obviously, I mean, my previous experience, it's been always kind of like bottom-up approach, which actually I have a completely different approach that is top-down. But the reason I can go top-down is because ITV Studios is actually working towards a mandate of carbon calculating and certification for all their productions globally. So now this mandate only applies to the UK. And this is actually helping me a lot because the mother company is telling the producers, guys, you really need to measure and you need to reduce your footprint. So obviously this is giving sustainability importance, because the problem that I've seen sometimes is that we say you need to start on pre-production, but then obviously everybody's really busy doing pre-production and normally they don't do it. And if you don't really start when you're making the decisions, it's going to be a more difficult process. It's also really important to engage with the whole production team, but also with the whole crew. So things that I've seen, like some kind of mistakes, I don't like to say the word mistake, but I'm going to say that I've seen sometimes, is that it only stays on the production department. So if everything stays on the production department, you're missing information and you're missing opportunities that they might be given by other departments. So again, always have a senior person of the production engaging with all the heads of department. On our case, on ITV Studios, the people, so the part of the team who's actually collecting all the data together and entering it on a toolkit, because it has to be done manually for now, it's normally the production manager or the production coordinator. Obviously, this is all depends on the size of the production, because maybe if you have a big drama production or film, then you're gonna hire an external service. But for us at ITV Studios, we always try to do it in-house if the size of the production allows us. And in terms of how we use the data, I mean, the data is used for two different things. So first of all is to engage and to understand, but for the production. So I've worked so many years with productions that they put lots of energy into small impacts. And the reason is not because it's not that they don't want to work on the big impacts, it's that they just don't know where the big impacts are. So again, data helps us. I always use the same sentence. Sorry if people has heard it before, but data helps us to be strategic, and we need to be strategic in order to reduce our impact. And in terms of ITV Studios, kind of as a mother company that we call it, we do have to. So we have committed to science-based targets. So obviously we now have to report on all our scopes. So we need to use that data to report on our scope 3 right now.
Great.
I just want to back up Rosette here, because it's extremely important from an Albert perspective as well that people start filling out the carbon action plan and the carbon calculator at the beginning of the project, and that you've got a key decision maker basically engaged right from the beginning, because you have to engage crew members on so many different levels. And in my development job, I learned that we make so many decisions at the beginning, right before we go into production, that will literally, you know, influence everything down the line, that you have to have that word with the key decision makers, so they understand that if they decide to go to 3 different countries, or if they decide to build 5 sets, that has a different kind of impact. And that's, I think it's extremely important. And I'm sure Cindy and Belinda can actually back that up as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead, Cindy.
No, I definitely agree with your comments, Zsófia. We always have to make sure that we are collecting this data, but a key factor is actually using the data to make informed decisions. And it's great when the crew can see how this data is being implemented, but we'll get into that later.
Wonderful. So I think, Cindy, I'm going to turn to you now because we've talked a lot about the Albert calculator tool, and I know that you've used the the PGA tools as well, but you've also kind of augmented the tools as well and kind of created your own tools. So I'm wondering if you can give me a bit of insight into what GreenSet has done on productions in regards to the GreenSet carbon calculation tool, how that kind of feeds into the general PGA tool, and just how that came to be, and what were the outcomes from that.
Okay, no problem. So commissioned by GreenSet and developed by Credible Carbon, the GreenSet carbon calculator was developed with the South African film industry in mind at first, and it's used to measure 46 key environmental indicators across all the film departments. And it's a tool our trainees use to help productions to understand their impact in real time. And where possible, the GreenSet carbon calculator uses local coefficients based on South African studies, and South African data has been applied to the GreenSet carbon calculator. And this was important to us for carbon footprint accuracy, because as you know, carbon emissions and coefficients actually tend to differ between countries. And also the GreenSet carbon calculator includes a recycling department that tracks the materials that are used, donated, or passed on to another department, which also helps to encourage participation and engagement within the circular economy. And by tracing emissions and emission savings to specific departments, the calculator is intended to help crews to identify areas for carbon reductions. Belinda, would you like to add on how measuring scope 3 emissions helped with the development of the polyurethane machine?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Raised by Wolves was, definitely made with sustainability in mind. We were very fortunate on that show. They helped fund the GreenSet carbon calculator and the GreenSet training program. But what we found with the data collection, once we started actually collecting the data and we put it in, we figured out that polyurethane in South Africa is used quite extensively for building. It's a great material to use, very versatile, and with lots of big shows that come to Cape Town. We found that more and more polyurethane was being used, and it was after electricity and fuel, it was the next largest contributor to our carbon footprint. So once we were armed with that information, we went to the producers and we said, hey guys, we're making a lot of carbon here with this polyurethane, and they agreed to fund a prototype machine which basically takes the polyurethane waste and turns it into building blocks. So without the data, if we hadn't been able to collect that data, we wouldn't have been able to, to motivate for that machine. And fast forward, to the next project that because you build on what you learn on a previous show, we've now managed to get a bigger machine and trying to reduce all of the polyurethane on the productions. And yeah, as I said, that wouldn't have been possible without collecting the data.
That's really incredible, excuse me, to see how putting your mind towards building something that will help one production can really kind of snowball into helping multiple productions, but it's also going in to help communities that are in need, right? So like it's really incredible to see that thinking outside of the box in terms of how you're developing things, and none of this would have been done if you hadn't been gathering the data. Is that correct? Is that what I'm gathering?
Exactly, Chris. I mean, what we've done with the building blocks is now we've motivated for the production to purchase these building blocks, which are made from set waste. So it's creating a circular economy, and then donate those as part of the offset of their carbon footprint. And in the example that recently we did was Mkhwanazi Educare Center, which is in a previously disadvantaged community in Cape Town. And some of those building blocks helped build the school, the Mkhwanazi school. So that's what we're aiming for. I mean, I think that what the great thing is about Albert is that, you ask for companies to offset their carbon footprint. And I find that that's such a great motivator to minimize your carbon footprint, because if the bottom line is you're going to have to pay for it, you're going to definitely want to minimize it. So yeah, I think it's really important.
I think, can I add something about this, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? I love that you said that, Belinda, because I actually was going to say that from the ITV Studios perspective, like I love the example that you put, because you're basically talking about innovation as well. And that's something that from ITV Studios perspective, we are looking into it a lot, because obviously we've been collecting data, right? Obviously the people in this panel, we've been collecting data for a long time. So we understand the data. We have tried to reduce on like in an easy, like a really, really easy way to do it, just by changing the culture, changing how we do things, etc., etc. But there is one point that there is nothing else you can do, right? And that's when we used to, well, that's when we offset. But offset has a cost, and the cost of offsetting is going higher and higher. So I think this is really encouraging companies to look at innovation and to think about investing, because at the end of the day, one of our problems is that we always think about short term, right? So no one wants to invest on a piece of innovation or try anything new that it might cost lots of money. But obviously, if you look at the long term, innovation is kind of like our next step. But obviously, you can't see if that's worth investing in a piece of innovation if you don't have the data first. And obviously, you can have the accountancy of how much it would cost you to offset the remaining emissions.
Can I add to it as well? Because I really love your example. I think it's absolutely amazing. It really ties in with a little bit with our ethos as well here, that yes, we ask everyone to offset, but before offsetting, we ask everyone to mitigate. That's why we're measuring it, because offsetting is the final solution in that sense. It's really nice to see you guys doing a circular solution, because you're not just offsetting, or you're not just doing this, but you're combining everything, and that's a great example. I wish we'll have more example of these in the future, based on like data and what we gathered and all of that. And I love to hear about also, it ties in with how every international partner for us is very different, because we've got localized needs, and clearly your needs can be justified by the data you gathered, and we would have never been able to know that unless we gathered that data, actually, because we might have like emission factors from 300 countries, and that's really good, but we didn't know that locally in Africa, for example, polyurethane is such a big issue on set. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do with all the international partnerships as well, to kind of shed light on each request, or what happens, what's more important. Like, let's say I come from Central Eastern Europe, we don't have an infrastructure of EV chargers. So for example, it's hard to request it from production to have a hybrid fleet in that sense, and we can back that up with data that we cannot do it, because we just don't have enough EV chargers that we could, no matter what we do, maybe in the next 5 years.
But the data can drive that business case, right? So
Exactly.
that's really important.
Yeah.
I did want to touch on something, like we were talking about mitigation and kind of making sure that you're doing what you can to kind of reduce the amount of waste. But a lot of that can't be done without engagement from everybody, from the crew, from the top down, from the bottom up, from every aspect. And I really just want to speak to Cindy and Belinda specifically about this, because I know that you did some really incredible initiatives on Raised by Wolves season 2, which I know specifically about, but I think you've done this on other productions as well. But can you give us some more insights into some of the creative ways that you engaged crew and really got everybody to buy into the whole idea of gathering, measuring, and making impacts?
Sure. Chris, when engaging with departments about sustainability, we communicate our messaging using various mediums of communications. So I'm talking about email memos, banners, GIFs, and even memes. Because all of our trainees are between the ages of 18 and 35. So they are quite vibrant in how they get their message across when it comes to sustainability. And it seems to be working well, because there's a bit of humor added to it. So you get to laugh a little while learning something about the environment and how you can reduce your impact. And the communication strategy on Raised by Wolves was uniform and consistent, with messaging centered around the agreed upon goals and targets, as well as a little bit of the global SDGs. So we had Circular Mondays, where we talk about the circular economy, Meat-Free Tuesdays, because, we need to reduce how much red meat we consume, wasteless Wednesdays, plug out Fridays. So it was just a fun way of focusing on one environmental topic throughout the days of the week. And we also had a GreenSet hotline, which the crew could use to reach us, whether they had questions about where they could purchase a solar heating unit for their homes, because we have a few issues with electricity in South Africa, maybe where they could get a greener alternative for a product that they are currently using. So essentially we were just very reachable, and we tried to make the messaging fun.
That's great. Belinda,
Can
do you
I,
have?
sorry,
Sorry,
can I
go
add
ahead, please,
something
Olivia.
fun
Yeah,
to it? Because we had, like, I definitely agree with Cindy on, like, make it, like, humor is one of the most important things, how you can engage people on the set. We worked on the comic book series, a comic book adaptation, and at some point we kind of like made up our own comic book hero and released a little bit of like a small comic book strip just to engage people for the same reason, because in our crew we had a lot of young people and they were like completely all over it, and it got a really, really good reception. They didn't want to do compost at the beginning, and we put like a well-known superhero on there and made some jokes, and they were suddenly composting everything. So it was just about really reaching them, and it was, yeah, to find these funny ideas.
that's
Yeah, we
awesome.
were really lucky on Raised by Wolves because the line producer put a lot of pressure on us. She was a very green. She was a great supporter of green, and every single day we had to send out a kind of sustainability message with the call sheet. So every day we had to make up a message and send it out there. And so, you were touching on all sorts of things like Earth Day or, whatever, African Giraffe Day, or there were all sorts of discussions that were happening there. And it just kind of kept the momentum going, which was really great,
Yeah, and it's the importance of reinforcing it, right? Just continually reinforcing it and bringing it and making sure that it's in every area of production so that people see it everywhere they go. Which is wonderful. So thanks for that insight. So I just want to turn the attention back to data a little bit. And like we talked about earlier on about how important it was to collect the data from the very beginning. But I just wanted to dig into that a little bit more and just get a sense of the types of common categories. And this is for anybody to jump into. So I'm not singling out anybody on this on these questions here. But just what are the common types of categories that are being tracked within carbon calculation tools, and within those categories, like what are some of the categories that are challenging for productions to challenge, and what are some of the opportunities there to kind of help production understand how they can work towards gathering that data a little bit more efficiently? If anybody would like to jump in.
You've been collecting data for the longest time. You tell us.
So basically, well, I'll tell you what Albert collects, which is actually, I think, is what Pitch and Pear collect as well. So it's mainly data. Yeah, it's mainly data on energy, transport, accommodation, disposal, and materials. In terms of the data, so basically, and kind of like the message is to collect data from pre-production to post-production. So anything, I always say, anything that is on the budget, so anything that you're covering during the production. In terms of our productions at ITV Studios, obviously we're measuring everything, but one thing that we really want to understand a little bit better is our energy. So obviously our transport, because transport accounts by like around 50% of our impact as an industry in general. I'm just saying an average here. But energy for us is really, really important because we have different targets and goals, but we have the goal to have all our sites on renewable energy by 2025. So obviously that's like less than 2 years away. So it's really important for us to understand how much energy we're using, how we're using the energy, and where. Because as we're talking globally here as well, I actually don't even work with UK productions or US. So I'm working with all the companies that we have around the world, but obviously it's really different, the opportunities that we have in the Netherlands and the opportunities that we have in Israel as well. So energy for us is a big, big topic at the moment. In terms of which one is maybe more difficult to collect the data, I would say transport It's really easy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It is easy.
Especially,
You've got your transport memo. They can just send
yeah.
it over. You just, it might be hundreds of lines, but it is a
Yeah,
transport
yeah,
memo.
that's what
Right
I
there.
mean. I'm sorry, especially for like, and especially for Cindy and Belinda, because I know they're doing this all the time. Like, obviously, it's such a long work to do, but I think it's easier in terms of where to find the data, because at the end of the day, the difficulty for productions is where to find it, because it's like they've maybe never asked for that certain data. So I would say energy, it can be quite, I don't think it's difficult, but it can be quite scary, I would say. Like if you're a production manager or production coordinator and we start talking about how many kilowatt hours you used, you know, if you plugged in. So that can be a little bit more tricky, but it's about education about knowing who they need to ask. And I would say materials is getting more and more difficult, I think, but because also we asking for more accuracy. Again, one of the things that we're putting lots of attention on now is accuracy in terms of data.
Yep.
And materials, I would say, because we have lots of materials. Again, we are not really actually accounting for all the materials that we use, because there are no carbon factors for every material that exists in the world. So I would say materials, I think, is the one that is going to get a little bit more tricky and a little bit more confusing in the future. And we really need to keep an eye on that and help productions on how to measure it.
I'd back Rosa up on materials for sure, and that's often inherently just stems from how production works, that they work with suppliers and construction companies who's building the sets for them, and then you have to go through other people to get the materials, at least in the UK and Central Eastern Europe. And I would also say that some of these productions, like, they're very different based on genre. So for a production that's based at studio, I know your electricity usage will be the primary one, and maybe you don't travel that much. For another production where you're flying all around the world, obviously your emission factors will be very, very different. So you kind of have to look at them case by case, I think. But I'll hand it over to Cindy as well. Belinda.
Yeah, I'd like to get Cindy's opinion on this. Yes.
Yes, indeed. And of course, a big focus for us is Scope 3 emissions. And honestly, sometimes we are introducing a completely new topic to the crew. So asking them to make sure that they are measuring how much PU was tricky, right? And maybe animal protein as well became a bit tricky. And just because the coefficients in South Africa are not so readily available, what was a benefit for us was working with scientists like Credible Carbon, which helped to make that data point easier for us, because they got the data and let us know what are the good or the more accurate quantities of measuring to use in our carbon calculator. So that scientific part was already handled for us, but now we just had to make sure that the crew understood why it was important to get this data. But definitely the construction department, set dressing, all the various departments that weren't really accustomed to providing data had to go through a learning curve. So Scope 3 is definitely
I think you touched on it. It's they're not used to it, that you have to introduce this. And the fact that we're asking for evidence at Albert, it also helps them sometimes. Oh, I can't just say that I used a battery pack. I do have to back it up and show that I've used a battery pack. All these questions are so important. We had a case where they said they've got renewable energy at the studio facility, and then we're like, okay, can you tell us who was the provider or something? It's like, oh no, we can't. It goes through a studio in the US, and we don't, like, they don't classify that data. And I'm like, and you have to do like a proper, I don't know, investigation work to find that kind of data out. Sometimes it's crazy. You have to jump through so many hoops just to find out what you're trying to gather. In Albert, we do have some benchmarks though, because very often the production will not be able to get, for example, how many people worked from home. And then in that case, we have benchmarks on it that 30 people work for 40 days, and then an average of like what their house his energy mix might be or something like that. So there's
It's real Inspector Clouseau work, isn't it?
Absolutely. Belinda, do you have anything else to add?
No. I think we've pretty much covered it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Chris.
Well, I want to touch on a couple of things. So Zsófia brought up. Oh, sorry, Rosa. Did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just would like to add in terms, because I think it's really important what they touched on in terms of stakeholders, like, so how easy is to get that data. And probably one of the reasons why material data is quite difficult is because it's not that as a production, as a producer, you have to engage your team and your crew. Is that no, then you have to engage all your external stakeholders and your suppliers. And here is sometimes, well, obviously you need to make the extra effort, and your suppliers need to understand. And I find this difficulty in especially south of Europe, for example, like Spain, Italy, that the suppliers don't like production says, okay, at the end of the production, you need to tell me how much money I spend with taxis to the taxi company. Or, well, actually, no, that's an easy one. But for example, kilometers. Yeah. And the taxi company it doesn't give it to them. And they say, no, I don't give it to you. So again, we need to change that culture that I need that data and I'm hiring you as a supplier. And as part of the contract, I need to put that you have to provide me that data. And I think this is really important to avoid frustration as well on the productions as well.
I so agree. And often what we find at Albert as well, very often, that if a production starts talking to the accounts team very early on, and the accounts team knows what they need to tag, because that's the kind of data then the coordinator will be able to input into the calculator, that will benefit everyone. Because if at the beginning, the accounting team is not informed that they have to track fuel, they have to track materials, they, all these POs that go through their hands, they just go somewhere in a big pool and they're not tracking them, then poor sustainability personal coordinator, whoever's filling out the calculator, will be done fuck. They will not be able to find all the information. And that's why at the beginning, as Rosaire said, some companies use fuel cards, other companies use stringer drivers, other companies use, I don't know, expense forms and petty cash. Every production use it differently, and you have to agree to the common way of like gathering data from the start, in my opinion. Sorry.
It's a really tricky mix when you're looking at kind of combine, like it's somewhat easier to kind of collect that scope 1 emissions that productions are carrying out, but when you're going into 2 and 3, it becomes really challenging. But I wanted to touch on the importance of baseline data and understanding where productions sit, just as a level set. And I know that with Raised by Wolves season 2, that there was some carbon calculation happening on season 1, but Belinda or Cindy, if you want, can you expand on what you learned from what you captured on season 1 to what you developed and how you kind of manifested that into season 2 and reduced even further?
Sure, Chris. As I mentioned, the producers were very pro-sustainability, scot-free, and the project was done for HBO. We had lots of support. So season 1, a consultancy by the name of RAP0 was brought in, and a baseline study was done across the first block of the production. And then GreenSet assisted with the collection of the data across the entire project. And we took that data at the end of season 1 and obviously presented it in a full report that was done to the producers. And that kind of informed us for season 2. So season 2, then we knew we had to now input into the Green Production Guides tools, and we input into the GreenSet calculator. We used the information that we had from the first season, and we built on that. And as we said, we motivated using the data from both seasons for the development of something like the polyurethane recycling machine. But generally we don't have time to do baseline studies on individual projects, so not like ITV, it's an organization, they can do a baseline study across all of, and then move from there. It's so short and sharp, even in 6 months or 8 months long. So once you start filming, you already want to be up to speed. So what we do is we take previous projects of a similar size, similar budget, similar, shooting period, and we go, okay, similar set build size, and we say, okay, we'll use that as almost the baseline to inform the next project of a similar size. So what we're doing is we're bettering ourselves on every production moving forward using the previous production.
That's great. Thanks, Belinda. Rose or Zsófia, do you have anything to add to
Yeah.
the baseline question?
I mean, for me, baselines are very important because otherwise, if we don't know where we are, we don't know where we're going. Like, and basically, I mean, now I'm talking about like, I'm not talking about individual productions. Now I'm talking about big companies, like saying, I mean, we all setting targets, right? Or even government, we all setting targets, but targets like comparing to what? So that's why basically we need the baselines. I understand how Belinda was explaining it in terms of a single production. So I mean, what we do, because Albert encourages us to do that as well, is try to create a draft or predicted footprint, which obviously we need to take into account that takes time as well. So like we need to be careful with the teams that they're not too constrained. But I think it's really what Belinda said is exactly what we're doing as well. And now Albert actually gives us this opportunity that we can copy footprints. So I can copy my footprint from series 1 to be my predicted of series 2. So then that's my baseline. Or even within the same company, if I don't have a series 1, so if it's a one-off or it's my series 1, I can do exactly the same as Belinda was saying it. I can copy the footprint from a similar production and be working around there. But yeah, I think it's really important because it's what tell us where we're going and how much we reduced and how.
And it really just it helps reduce the amount of resources involved in kind of creating that, right? So if you've got that historical data, then you can just build on it and move forward. So that's incredible that's available.
And the industry will need it anyway. It's not, now I'm not even talking about ITV studios. I'm just talking the industry needs to know where we are. So like we know where we're heading. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's why Albert also well, this is not just why, but Albert also collects data, obviously, and we do publish some researches as well in terms of like different genres and the footprint and size and all of that, because it informs all of us, and you can learn from what the others have done on a similar projects, what were their hurdles, and maybe 5 years ago they had different kind of hurdles. In the next 5 years, we'll have to look out for something else, and we have to brace ourselves for that and maybe think long term quite a lot. And I'm always hoping data will encourage us to think long term and plan towards the future and say, like, I don't know, we're lacking this, let's build something, let's make sure then the next couple of years we can do better at that, because all the data tells us that we are unable to do that now, if that makes sense.
So just looking at the time, we've only got a few more minutes left, but I have a couple of more questions that I wanted to pose to the group. And the first one, maybe we can kind of just go through this one, but I wanted to get a sense of where everybody feels, where is measuring and the tools going in the future? Where do we think that that's going to be kind of heading towards? Are there ways to kind of streamline the process to make it easier? And we've talked about this a little bit, but if we can just maybe summarize that a little bit, ways for productions to gather, track, and report the data much easier. So just putting that out to the group, feel free to answer if you have a thought about that.
I'm very hopeful. I'm hoping that more and more people will start measuring, and then we can increase our accuracy and maybe employ a couple of APIs and stuff. And in that regards, we can connect everything and we get even more accurate data from all productions, and that will feed into how we can cater best for them, and then build out an international supplier list, which we already have, but maybe boost it up even more. And kind of, because Rosette and Belinda and we were all talking about that your suppliers are a big challenge as well, especially in different regions and different territories. So I'm hoping everything will come together and
Great,
thanks.
Thanks, Zsófia.
Yes, I'd like to add something as well. I think just finding ways to demystify carbon calculation a bit further, bringing the tools closer to the ordinary crew member, not just the green team, so that they can just practice how to measure their own carbon footprint as a crew member, so that when we come to them and we say, okay, we're measuring the whole production's carbon footprint, then that's already something they're familiar with. And I think the accounting department can definitely play a much, much bigger role. Literally from the day that the accounting department starts, you know, they should be made aware of what they need to gather and how to extract that.
That's great, Cindy. That's really empowering, though, right? Giving the power back to people on crew to kind of understand it a bit more, and then they might feed into the larger picture of it. I love that idea. Go ahead, Rosa.
For me, I mean, what we need is accuracy. Like, I think this is a must, and this is something that we need to work towards. Actually, like at ITV Studios, in order to when we report on our scope 3 emissions, we use spend data, so we don't use Albert data yet. So now we're using spend data in order to be more accurate, because Albert data is entered manually. But obviously we are on this, like, okay, one is entered manually, but spend data is not completely accurate. So we don't have the solution yet. I would say automatization, which actually kind of like goes against what Cindy was saying, but I completely understand what Cindy is saying in terms of we need to engage the crews more on understanding what we're measuring. For our productions, I think automatization would help a lot. An alignment on carbon factors between different calculators. So one issue that we're seeing in Europe a lot, and that's from ITV Studios, but these other companies having the same issues, that we mainly using Albert, but there are countries that they have their own tool, and their government, they asking them to use their tool. And we're using different methodologies, and we're using different carbon factors. So this is really, really important especially for like global companies, in order to use the same tools or use different tools in different places, but reporting on the same way. So for me, is accuracy, automatization, and alignment on methodologies and carbon factors as well.
I think we're kind of like all talking about the same one, because like accuracy could come from if our programs would be talking to each other. So let's say the accounting program can feed straight into the carbon factor, the carbon calculator in that sense, and then the crew members can still engage, because I think it is really empowering for them as well to like finally feel like they're properly involved. And that's why, like, I think all the communication and all the signages and the visible communication, the hearts and minds stuff, very important to them as well. But at the same time, accurate data is important on our side, and we cannot do that without all these programs talking to each other. I'm not an IT person, so to me it's magic, but I'm really hoping they're gonna start speaking soon.
Great. So I'm going to ask one more question to everybody, and then unfortunately we're going to have to finish this conversation. It's been a really, really intriguing conversation, but I'm going to do a bit of a lightning round. So I'd just like to get everybody's sense. So what are one or two things that a producer or an individual or an organization can do right now to move the needle towards measuring their carbon footprint better? So perhaps maybe we can go from left to right on my screen. So Zsófia, Rose, Cindy, and Belinda.
Okay, well, if you're a producer and you've got a script and a preliminary budget, just make sure you go through your script with a green, sustainable eye, and start thinking about it that way as well.
Awesome.
Sign up to Albert, obviously.
Was it me next? Yeah.
Sure, go ahead, Rose.
Yeah, for me, was say a little bit what I said at the beginning, that is like, engage with absolutely everybody, stakeholders, not only crew, like all your suppliers as well, from the beginning, and let them do your work, basically. And the second one, and that's something I've actually been asking quite a lot, is like put on your production teams and your crews contract at sustainability as a part of their role. At that one of their responsibilities is to collect data and to give you the data, or to measure the carbon footprint of their department. Put it on the contract. Like,
Rosa,
don't be...
The only issue with that is that I still have productions that I worked on in the past, and I still haven't got a contract from like 3 years ago.
Cindy?
For me, I would definitely say for training or training programs or anyone entering the film industry, sustainability in film must be communicated to them as the way things are going to be done moving forward and in the future. Because my generation of people grew up knowing about the climate change issue. So I think just making sure that from jump, they know that this is how the industry is moving, so that when they grow and develop in their careers, it's already entrenched in how they operate.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but not least, Belinda?
Well, I just say, just do it. You know, the tools are out there. So just do it. Make sure that it doesn't matter what tool you're using, but, you know, get out there and measure your carbon footprint. And I think the inclusion of a green line in a budget is a great step forward, you know, and offset your carbon footprint. And if you can, offset it locally.
Great, thank you so much. And so thank you everybody for all of your insight and your thoughts about the discussion today. It was really a fantastic conversation. I'd like to thank Cindy, Belinda, Rosé, and Zsófia for joining us today. I really hope that, that our viewers found the conversation inspiring as we move towards the art of decarbonization. So I wish everybody a great SPF, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.